Hello, you gorgeous individuals, it's Kav here, and today I'm going to be discussing To the Bone, which is a movie about eating disorders. So before I jump into anything else, I'm going to let you all know that there are huge trigger warnings for both this image and this video about eating disorders, self-harm, body image, and anything of that sort, so definitely proceed with caution. Now, I did not watch this movie for fun or for enjoyment. I watched it so that I could share with you all my thoughts, because many of you may know that I am a survivor of an eating disorder myself, so I wanted to give you all an own voices perspective of a review per se, but this isn't exactly a review. It's more of a discussion about how they approach the topic of eating disorders. Now, disclaimer before I go anywhere else, this video is not meant to hurt the cast or crew or anyone who was involved in the making of this movie. It is just to talk about this movie and highlight the positives, and also learn how we can better our representation of mental illness and eating disorders and those serious topics that do need to be discussed in media. This video is strictly meant for other people who have watched the movie and would like to discuss their thoughts on it, or for some people who might be going in to watch the movie and would like to know whether or not it is a safe thing to do. Now, I can't make that judgment call for anyone, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend I have that ability, but if you would like to get some more opinions and some more of an idea of what this movie was like for someone who has survived an eating disorder and has dealt with one for 5 years now, then I think that this would be a video you might want to watch. But I will let you all know that this video may contain some spoilers for the movie. I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to pull from my notes, so I will let you know that this video will contain some spoilers, so proceed at your own risk, because if that's important to you, then you might not want to watch this video. But for anyone who would like to, then please join me and let's get started. So the first positive I have for this movie is that it is own voices. Both the director and the main actress herself have dealt with eating disorders themselves, so I was really glad. And from what I know, the main actress also visited the LA Center for Eating Disorders to do some more research, so I do think they did put in effort and put in research before going into this movie, and they tried to approach it as sensitively as they could. The second positive I have is that they included a trigger warning at the beginning of the movie. I was nervous that they wouldn't, but I was really glad that they chose to. I wish that they could have been a little more explicit with the trigger warning, I guess, because I think there were some more triggering aspects in the movie than they disclosed in that warning, but I was glad that they included one, because that's something that's very important and needs to be included in media more often. Now, as I said, there were both positives and negatives for this movie, so I'm going to discuss both, and I am mainly going to focus on the eating disorder aspect, but I will talk about other plot aspects that may have drawn away from that or hurt that in any way. So first things first, the main character suffers from anorexia. I want to be specific about what she suffers from, because all eating disorders are not the same, and that is explicitly stated in the description, and she says that multiple times in the movie. It's referred to multiple times in the movie, so it is explicitly stated what she deals with, and I'm glad that that was stated, and I think that it depicted that in a realistic way. It showed her obsession / addiction to working out and to calorie counting, and it also showed her eating, which I think is an important distinction to make, because when you are dealing with an eating disorder, it's not necessarily that you just don't eat. Sometimes you do eat, sometimes you don't. It's different from person to person. I can't sit here and tell you what an eating disorder is like for everyone, but there is a common misconception that when you have an eating disorder, you don't eat at all, but they do. But I am glad that it showed her eating at times, and it showed her struggles with eating, and it showed her picking at her food but not really finishing it, but she still showed up to meals and such. It showed that in a realistic way, that it didn't seem like she was just starving herself, to say the least. She was, of course, but not in a stereotypical sense, I guess, if that makes sense. One of my biggest issues with this movie was the fact that there were quite a few ableist comments. There was a comment made at the beginning of the movie about calorie Asperger's, which I thought was really insensitive, to say the least. The R slur was also used in the movie, and there were a few other ableist slurs like that used, such as psycho and nuts, which I think like I stated, were offensive and insensitive, and I think nothing would have changed if they had just taken those out of the movie or just replaced them with not as offensive and hurtful words. And something to be aware of before going into this movie is graphic images. There are 3 I can think of off the top of my mind that were shown that were extremely graphic of the main actress's body. So definitely be aware of that, because that can be extremely triggering to some people. Another issue I had was with Susan, who was the stepmother character. I had quite a few issues with a few comments she made. One of them was what she did in the beginning of the movie, where she took a picture of the main character and then showed it to her and said, "Do you think this is beautiful?" And I understand what she was trying to do, but I felt like the way she approached it was very wrong, and that no one should approach it that way. And I understand this is a movie and not everyone is going to do what's in the movie, but media does have an impact on how we live our lives, and I don't think that that idea of approaching someone who is dealing with an eating disorder that way is correct. I thought that it was a very incorrect way of doing it. So that was something that I thought was a negative. And there were some other comments she made. She referred to the main character's biological mother as a bipolar lesbian and said that in a negative sense, when there is nothing wrong with being either bipolar or being a lesbian. So I was upset with the way she phrased that, because she could have stated that as a positive or just as a fact, but instead it was stated with a negative connotation to it. Another thing she did was refer to a friend of the main characters as the Mexican, when really that character's mom was from El Salvador, and that was like a passing comment, but it did rub me the wrong way because it was very stereotypical and just very, again, insensitive to do. So her character was one I had a lot of issues with, and I know it may have been supposed to be a character trait, but none of this was really challenged. It was kind of subtly challenged, but I think that at least one of her comments should have been outright challenged to show that this is the way the character is, but what she says is wrong. One thing I think this movie did stereotype is kind of the stereotypical resisting treatment type thing, which I think is common in movies or media forms dealing with mental illness and eating disorders and other types of non-physical illnesses. And I have some issues with that stereotype, because whereas it does have some truth to it from what I've seen, I also think that that can be the reason it has some truth to it, because they ingrain in people's minds that you should resist treatment. And I kind of wish it had strayed away from that stereotype more, because it just felt very played out, and also it just felt like it can cause people to want to resist treatment because that's how they see it done on TV. I think it did kind of lessen over the course of the movie, but I do wish they had approached that with a better sense. One super positive that I had is that they showed a guy with an eating disorder. I thought that was great, because people don't tend to realize that guys can have eating disorders too. Anyone of any gender can suffer from an eating disorder. It's not just a stereotype, so I was glad that they showed a guy who was suffering from anorexia nervosa as well, and he was a major character in the movie. Something I had mixed opinions on was the range of weight. In the inpatient care the main character is sent to, there was one character who was fat, but the majority of the rest of the characters were thinner. I wish they had done more of a range of weight than that, and I wish that they had focused more on the fat character, because they focused a lot on anorexia, and I understand that that's completely fine, but the 3 characters I guess really focused on in the inpatient care were all suffering from anorexia, so I wish that they had given some of the characters who were suffering from bulimia or some other eating disorder, or who were not as thin as those characters, I wish they had been given more of a platform to speak, because I think that's important, but I was glad that they were at least shown from time to time. Another character that I had mixed opinions on was Dr. Balcom, who was the doctor helping the main character, and I understand that he was meant to be approaching eating disorders and eating disorder recovery in an unconventional way, but a few of the statements he said really rubbed me the wrong way. There was one scene of his that I really liked, which I will get to, but in the beginning and even after that one statement I really enjoyed, I felt that he said some things that were very, again, insensitive, and whereas I don't think that the main character or any of the characters should have been coddled, I do think that there was a better way to approach it, and I felt that some of the statements he made weren't very doctor-like, I guess. There was a point in the movie where he told the main character to, and I apologize for the sexism in this comment, get a pair. And I felt like that was a very weird way to approach being a doctor, and I guess it could potentially work, but I just wasn't glad with how it was done, and I felt like his character could have been done better. Another thing that I had an issue with was the way they talked about cutters, which is how people who self-harmed were referred to, and I felt that that was just a very flippant way of dealing with the idea of self-harm, which is something serious that should be taken seriously. If they wanted to tackle that topic, they should have done it better, or they should have just kept it out of the movie at all if they didn't want to tackle that. But I don't think tackling it the way they did was the right approach to go. One thing that I had really mixed opinions on was the family therapy. I wasn't really sure how I felt about it, so I don't really know how to cover my opinions on it. I thought that it was showcased well. I think what they were trying to showcase was done well. But I also felt that the family was really centering themselves instead of the main character who was dealing with the eating disorder, and they kind of made her seem like a problem. There was even a point where she referred to herself as a problem, and I thought that was a horrible way of dealing with it, because I never felt like that truly got solved, and if they had solved that, I think it would have been a great story arc. Other than the sister and the main character's relationship, there was no relationship that I think really made amends. There was a point with the main character having a good moment with Susan and with her biological mother, but neither of them really contributed to the solving of that, and if they had solved that, I would have been more comfortable with the statements made in that family therapy session, but because of the way they were made and the way there was no follow-through, it did kind of mix up my opinions a bit. Another comment that I can't speak on because I'm not Jewish was a comment made about the Holocaust Museum, and I felt that it rubbed me the wrong way again, and I wasn't a fan of it. But like I said, it's not my place to make that statement, but I did just want to let you all know that that statement really rubbed me the wrong way. Now on to my favorite part of the movie. I absolutely loved the water scene. That was by far my favorite part of the movie. I think that that was one of the most realistic points in the movie, and it was the scene right after that where Dr. Beckham told the main character what really appealed to me. The way he told her not to listen to the voice that told her she can't, or that she can't stop what she's going through. The way he told her to just tell that voice to shut up. And I was really glad with the way that was approached, and that was by far my favorite part of the movie, and I was so happy with the way it was done. And I feel like the water scene was the time where all of the characters who were dealing with the eating disorder kind of saw beauty again after what they were dealing with and overcoming. So I really enjoyed that a lot. Another part that I really loved was the bond between the characters in the inpatient home. I thought that was very well done, and I was really pleased with the way that was done, because I think that when you do deal with something like that, you do get a special bond. Okay, so this is the part where I'm going to get more into spoilers, so if this is enough for you, you can head off here, but if you want to stick around to the more spoilery section, then you can stick in. So one of the characters was pregnant, and I really liked that because I felt like it showed the characters something to live for other than themselves. And whereas I do think that you should live for yourself, it did show them something else to focus on, which I think can be helpful at times. And I was really happy with the conversation that had and that entire pregnancy story arc. I thought it was done well, especially the miscarriage. I think that was really the turning point of the movie, where the main character was finally coming out of it, but that sent her back into her eating disorder, but then at the end she overcame it. And the miscarriage was one of my favorite parts of the movie as well, and I thought it was very well done. Another thing I liked was how the main character briefly tackled misogyny and tackled how guys kind of felt it was okay for them to just touch her without her consent. And it was a very brief section of the movie, but I was glad that it happened because she talked about it, and it is something that needs to be addressed. Probably my least favorite aspect of the movie was the romance aspect. I thought that this movie could have been completely done without the romance. It could have been done better without the romance, honestly, because they could have created the same bond between the main character and the love interest, except they could have done it platonically, because platonic bonds count too, but they made it romantic, and I think that really ruined the movie for me. Because at the end of the movie, when the main character kind of had that imagination scene or that dream, it felt like the guy saved her, and I hate that idea because No one can save you, especially not when you're suffering from something like a mental illness or an eating disorder. You can't rely on someone else to save you, which is what the doctor said. But I mean, of course you can rely on professionals to help you, but to expect your love interest to save you, it is just a very dangerous trope to play into. So I was very upset with how that was done. I wish the main character could have come to that realization herself and gone back and overcome that herself, because I think it would have been more powerful that way, and I think it would have been more realistic that way. Basically, as you can tell, I had some pretty mixed opinions on this movie. There were a lot of positive aspects and a lot of negative aspects. Honestly, I think that the eating disorder portrayal was done relatively well for what I had expected going into the movie, but I do think that there was some improvement that could have been done, both with the eating disorder and with other things that were portrayed in the movie. If any of you all are suffering from an eating disorder, I will link some helplines in the description below. Please get yourself some help, because you can get through this, you can overcome it. It is possible. I have done it, many others have done it, and you are more than your eating disorder. It does not define you, and you can overcome it, and I 100% believe you are strong enough to. It won't be an easy journey, but you can do it, and I'm here rooting for you, and all of us are rooting for you. You deserve to live a happy, healthy life. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day or night. Please remember you're beautiful and you genuinely deserve the world, and I will see you this Sunday with a brand new video. Goodbye!